Welcome to a very special edition. You see him right there. A very special edition of Old School Scribe Podcast. There he is, Ken Anderson, the all-time leading passer in Bengals history. When he retired, the man was the NFL's all-time leader in completion percentage in a season, in a game, and in a postseason career. The great Kenneth Allen Anderson. Kenny, Happy New Year. Great to see you.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Love it. 40th anniversary of the big one, the Super Bowl in Detroit. It's hard to believe it's 40 years, isn't it, Kenny?
Well, what's gone by fast, I'll tell you that. The outcome's still the same, though, isn't it?
I think the last time I checked, unfortunately, your MVP season. I mean, that's pretty special.
Yeah, no, that was a fun year. It was the year we changed uniforms. It was as things went on that season. Riverfront Stadium really became electric, and all of a sudden, I think Nancy Brown had a lot to do with that. But all of a sudden, we had banners all over the stadium with messages on it, and the fans got into it. It's the orange and black wigs. It's face painting. It was the whole ball of wax, but just a magical season.
And obviously that stat, I mean, everybody knows the story, how that season started for you. Benched in the opener, came back and won a great second game at Shea, a wild game at Shea that really got your season going. Talk about that week between the games when you weren't even know if you were going to start.
Well, it was, kind of interesting. And I think it was a situation where, I was putting so much pressure on myself. They had drafted my replacement. Jack Thompson, and a lot of talk, at least in the newspapers, that it was time for him to go ahead and become the starting quarterback. And, I remember our last preseason game, I think we're playing Denver in Riverfront Stadium, and we're down right before half. We're down the 5-yard line. I threw an interception and went 95 yards the other way for a touchdown and got booed out of the stadium. And so I thought, going into the opener, I had to be perfect. And you can't play football that way. And, so all of a sudden, I go out in the first quarter, I throw 3 interceptions. I think 2 of them went for touchdowns and 1 of them went down to the 1-yard line, and we're down 21-0. And Jack Thompson was hurt, and in comes Turk Schoner. And he runs around and pulls the game out, and we win it 28-21. And what the heck is going to happen, next week? And I went in on Monday and met with Lindy Infante, the offensive coordinator, with Forrest Gregg. We talked about a lot of different things. Do I start? Is it better if I come off the bench if I'm needed? And, and just a lot of different things. And so we kind of left, and he said, well, just be here first thing Wednesday morning and we'll make a decision. And, then on Tuesday, I got a call that they were working out a running back, and could I come down and throw to him? I think they brought somebody just to see if I could still throw a spiral. I don't know what it was.
That's hard to believe. That's unbelievable.
And then Wednesday morning, went in and met with Forrest. He says, finally, what do you want to do? I said, I want to start. He said, okay, you're starting. Yeah. So we'd go out to practice on Wednesday, and we're in our first team session, and I'm calling a play, and it's a pass play, and the offensive line is really busting me. And they say, hey, which way are you going to throw us? We go make the tackle after you throw an interception. So I said, and so now we get to the game in New York, and it's the same weekend as the U.S. Open Tennis Tournament, which was right next door to Shea Stadium, where we were playing the Jets. And the offensive line always took a hotel van to the stadium early. Well, we get on the team buses and we get to the stadium. We have no offensive line. We go out to warm up. We have no offensive line. At least we didn't have the starters. Yeah. And we've got the state police out looking for them. The van driver took them to Yankee Stadium rather than Shea Stadium, and now they're stuck in traffic trying to get to the ballpark. Well, they kind of come trotting out, in the middle of warm-ups, and we go back and we go out and we've got our first series. And, so I think Lindy Infante's going to, let me hand off a couple of times, get into the flow of the game. And of course, the first play is a pass. And I get in the huddle. I said, all right, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to call a pass. It's going to go to the right, just in case something bad happens. Go make a tackle, will you? And of course, we won that game 31-30 in a great game. And we kind of took off from there.
Yeah, the sack exchange, that wasn't exactly an easy defense. I mean, he's calling you, giving you a pass on the first play against that great pass rush.
Well, Marty Lyons, Joe Klecko, Abdul
Gastineau?
Gastineau. So they were a great defense. And as we saw a year later, when in '82 we played them the first game of the playoffs and got beat.
Well, Kenny, the press box phones went out. I remember you telling me like Lindy Infanti's like hanging out of the press box trying to get hand signals down there.
Well, it was kind of cold, or the press box was in the corner of the stadium because it was a baseball stadium, and so the easiest way to do it was, I could see him. He's standing on the ledge and he's signaling in the play, so I didn't have to go through a third party to the backup quarterback to get him in. I just look up to Lindy and get the plays from him as until the phones went back on.
I mean, to come back, I mean that's a great story for competitors of all sizes and ages, coming back, what happened to you in the opener, come back, have the, lead your team to the Super Bowl. What do you think? Why? How'd you do it?
Well, sometimes, you can't get any lower. I said, well, might as well go out and play, because if I don't play well, I'm probably benched anyway. So let's just go out and play football. And that's the way you're supposed to be. And, and I was well prepared, and, our coaches always do a great job. Lindy was a great offensive coordinator. And so you just go out to play. I mean, I knew I could still play. And, it helps to have a veteran group around me who gave me, tremendous support. Blair Bush, our center, and, we got Lapham and Bujnak and Montoya, and Mike Wilson was our right tackle, of course, Anthony and, Isaac and all those guys, they just gave me nothing but great support.
I mean, you got a great year out of a career year out of Dan Ross at tight end. Isaac Chris was just coming in and Isaac was just going down, and they kind of met together and really in a beautiful year for those guys. I mean, Isaac didn't have a prolific year, but he had huge, big games. He was huge in that Jets game. He was huge in San Diego. And Collinsworth, of course, became the first Bengal to catch 1,000 yards.
Well, and I remember that San Diego game when we went out there, which was a big game because, we won that one going away. And had we lost out there, the AFC Championship game would have been in San Diego rather than Cincinnati.
Right.
But it was, Chris was having a great year, was getting all kinds of attention. And they were leaving Isaac Curtis one-on-one. And, Isaac was still a great enough, but you don't do that. And he torched him. And I think he had a big go route, in New York. And I remember him coming back on the side. I said, hey, Kenny, put me in a tighter split and let me run a go from in there. I can run right by him. And so we got a big completion, out of that too. But he was, Isaac is, you'll never convince me that he's not the best Bengal receiver of all time.
How good was he, Kenny? I mean, you saw a lot of receivers, even, we're going to get later in your coaching career, but you've seen a lot of guys. How good was Isaac?
Well, as good as anybody. I always say that he made the same impression on the league as a rookie that Jerry Rice did when he came into the league. But you got to remember back in 1973, we were only throwing the ball 20, 22 times a game. Offensive linemen, couldn't use their hands in pass protection. They had to kind of keep them within the framework of their body. So, you didn't have a chance for them to pass block. So you didn't throw as much. But Isaac was always good for, 10 touchdowns a year, which was as good as, anybody in the league. But his stats weren't gaudy because we didn't throw as much. But he had tremendous speed, but he wasn't a track guy that was playing football. He was a football player that had world-class speed. And if my memory serves me right, that they wanted him to try out for the Olympic relay team.
Right.
And he stuck with football. But, a lot of guys that have tremendous speed can't run routes. And Isaac could stop. He could change direction. He could, he had more than one gear. I mean, you could not overthrow him because he had that one more gear to go get it when he needed it.
Yeah. You tell a great story when you guys get, around each other. You guys always needle each other. It's great. And you would always say, Paul Brown, heavy guys out there killing each other in practice. But if Isaac's hammy might have been bothering him, he'd say, hey, Isaac, it's okay. Sit this one out.
Well, we'd be in training camp and you knew Isaac was special because he wouldn't say anything. He would just say, I think my hamstring's tight. And that was good enough to get him a practice on.
It was, and Danny Ross was, I know he was invaluable in that 1981 season. The tight end.
he was the perfect tight end for Lindy Infante's offense. We were one of the first ones in the league that were doing a lot of option routes. And Danny would go ahead and get on the side of a linebacker and break in or out depending on technique. And, and he had that flexibility. And I kind of call him Gumby. He could put the ball anywhere and he could contort his body to make the catch. But, it was something that, short 60 Y option, X smash, and he caught a bunch of those. And, we knew each other so well that by his release off the line of scrimmage, I know what he was doing. So the ball would be in the air before his break.
Yeah. He made a great catch. You made a great throw, and he made a great catch in the Freezer Bowl when he went over the middle. Don't know if it would have held up this year. I'm not, with replay. I think it would have.
Never a doubt about that, Hobby. But he got a release. It was cover 2. We're trying to get the tight end down the middle, and
right.
He laid out and caught it right off, on the tips of his fingers, right, inches off the turf, and one of the great catches in Bengals history.
Hey, you're one of the. I've always said you're the only quarterback ever who won a game on 2 different planets. I mean that Freezer Bowl. How to use the old Johnny Carson line? How cold was it?
Well, nobody had ever experienced anything like that. 59 below with the wind chill. You think you're kind of tough, and and all of a sudden you go, holy mackerel! It's really cold out there, and and it wasn't so much the temperature, which I think was about 9 below, but it was the 30-mile-an-hour winds that kind of drove everybody crazy, especially throwing the football. But I think my favorite story about that game is I'm so glad there was no ESPN, no cell phones in those days, because, they brought heated benches in. We'd never seen the heated benches before. And so it's during the first quarter, and I'm sitting on the bench and I'm sitting on my hands, and, luckily I've got my helmet on, and they throw a cape over me, trying to keep me warm. And there's a large roar in the crowd. And I stand up to see if there's a turnover, and if I'm going back in, and my feet don't come out of the slots, and I go down, and the first thing that hits is my face mask, and I'm seeing stars, and I'm calling for Marv Pollins, the trainer, give me some smelling salts, do something. I can't get knocked out of the championship game falling off a bench. And, now in today's world, I probably would have gone in concussion protocol and not finished the game.
Well, you certainly finished it. That was Bengals went to their first Super Bowl. What was it like after? I mean, nowadays we see there's all these it's a great big production after you win a conference championship. What was it like that day? It was so cold.
Well, we just, we went in the locker room, and I think there was an NBC report. I think they had the game that day. Merlin Olsen was doing the game, and there was a reporter in there, kind of talking to some of the players. But, the thing that I remember most about it is just the look of joy on Paul Brown's face when he came in the locker room, and the Bengals were going to a Super Bowl.
And it was a hell of a game. I mean, that you guys came so close up there in Detroit 2 weeks later. And it was I was talking to Lap about this a couple of weeks ago. It was basically just the mistakes. I mean, if you don't make the mistakes, you win the game, and probably handily.
Well, we had 5 turnovers, and you can't do that. And I'm as guilty as anybody. And they fumbled the opening kickoff. We had great field position, and we get a first down, and we've got third down, on about the 5-yard line. And so we're going to go trips to the left, and the way that they played their coverage, we're going to take the 2 inside guys and pick outside for Isaac Curtis coming underneath. And I read the coverage, I throw it, and all of a sudden Dwight Hicks is standing there for the interception, ran it out about 20 yards. And of course that led to their first touchdown. And they always say the team that scores first in the Super Bowl has the odds, the best odds, to win the game. And, years later, I saw Dwight Hicks at a celebrity golf tournament. I went up to say hello. And he said, "I'm surprised you're talking to me." And I said, "Well, I've long forgotten that play, lying through my teeth." He said, "Let me tell you one thing." He said, "I busted the coverage. I didn't go with my man to the corner." And so it made me feel a little bit better. At least I didn't read the coverage wrong.
Well, I mean, you were the first quarterback to throw for 300 yards in the Super Bowl. 300, right on the money. And we'll talk about this later too, but you did coach a guy. You did get a ring. You got a ring as the quarterback's coach for the Steelers. But you had a better Super Bowl. You had a better Super Bowl than Ben Roethlisberger. He only threw for 256 and your 95 pass rating was better than Ben's 92. So, like you said, Ben had the 2-minute drill. You didn't have I guess what your Super Bowl 16 was remembered for was, the 4 shots from the one where you couldn't get in.
Yeah, like I say, we had that interception, and then in the next quarter I go and I hit Chris down, first down about the 10-yard line, and he fumbles it. They recover that, and then they had 2 squib kicks right before halftime that led to 6 points. If we just recover those kicks, we still win the game.
Right.
If they had a great goal line stand,
Right.
and Pete Johnson hadn't been stopped all year, and so it's
Right.
a lot of things, and like I say, 5 turnovers, you don't win any game.
Kenny, I think you had. I'm going to see you had more than 300 yards rushing. You might have been the second leading rusher on that team if I go back and look at it. Maybe not because it was Alex.
No, I was the second. I was the second leading rusher that year. We were one of the first ones that started doing the naked bootlegs. Kind of take one way coming out, and excuse me, a lot of teams hadn't seen that, and so if things were covered, I just would go ahead and run.
Were you surprised Lenny didn't call that on the goal line?
Well, hindsight is always 20/20, and like I say, the success ratio of Pete Johnson, we gave the ball 3 out of 4 times to him. I do that over and over again, and Chuck Studley was their defensive coordinator, and I kind of said, well, maybe we should have faked it. I should have rolled out. He says, no, we were waiting for that too. So that may not have worked either.
You still, you told Hicks, you were kidding with Hicks, of course you hadn't forgotten about it. And you probably still think about it. I mean, you made a lot of visits to the Silverdome as a coach. I bet you probably would pregame would find yourself in that end zone, I would imagine, and thinking about it.
Well, I don't know. I think everybody in that team, you replay it to a certain amount, but it doesn't take away for the magical year we had, in Cincinnati, and I go back, to the mid '70s when Paul was still coaching, and we won the division once, and we were the wild card one year. Pittsburgh won the division, and I remember that year, I think we only played 14 games. I think Pittsburgh was 12-2. We were 11-3. We were the only wild card back in those days. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Cleveland and Houston were both 10-4. They may have won every other division, but we beat up on everybody else. We also beat up on each other. But in that period of time, and Boomer continued that tradition. We were as good as any team in the National Football League, and I think we had everybody's respect.
What was it like playing for Paul, Kenny?
Well, football was different in those days. That the roster was only 40. You only had 7 coaches, counting the head coach. Bill Walsh coached quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends. Bill Johnson was the tight end coach. Jack Donaldson was the running back coach, and then you had Chuck Studley, Chuck Weber, and Dick Modzelewski, I think, was the defensive line coach, and Paul Brown was the head coach.
Right. Yeah.
So every assistant coach coached a special teams. We didn't have a strength and conditioning coach back then, but Paul was a great evaluator of talent.
Yeah. He
I got a little frog in my throat, Jeff. Hold on.
Get him. Yeah. Paul, because I remember you saying maybe this a little bit too big for you, Anderson. I mean, he could. He had the great cutting. He would have the great cutting comment, right?
Well, you would go in to get the critique after a game on. In those days, it was Tuesday. We'd have Monday off, and we would go in Tuesday, I believe. And he would walk into the front of the classroom, and he had his black coaching shoes on with white socks, his tan polyester pants, a plain white T-shirt, and his black ball cap on, and his yellow legal pad. And he would go through and make the critiques for everybody without ever raising his voice. But, he could really cut to the bone. And in fact, it was kind of standard procedure. All the players that you came in, you never wore a gray T-shirt because you could see the pit stains when you were sweating so much.
Yeah.
And then, you always had a towel around your neck. But he was he was something.
He obviously he felt highly of you. You were one of his pallbearers.
Well, it was Oh, I think, I don't know. I think, he had a lot of respect for me, and I certainly had a lot of respect for him. I think he thought I was pretty smart. He liked intelligent quarterbacks. I could think on my feet. It was just, but like I say, to be drafted by the Bengals, and there was an interview, and we had a great quarterback class that year. It was, Jim Plunkett, Archie Manning, Dan Pastorini, the first three picks of the draft, and
Yeah.
then it was Lynn Dickey was a third rounder. I was the third rounder. Joe Theismann, Scott Hunter from Alabama was also in that draft. Started for the Green Bay Packers for a while. And before the draft a year ago or so, they were talking about all the quarterbacks coming out, and Sports Illustrated did a nice article about 71. That was the first year of the quarterback. And Jim Plunkett, his comment was that Kenny was the lucky one, that he got into a stable situation, a good franchise in Cincinnati, with Paul Brown as the head coach and Bill Walsh as the coordinator.
Yeah.
It's certainly very beneficial to me.
I even think back to and in '75 it was the second of your two straight passing titles in the '70s. You won four, and in '75 you had that great year. And Paul Brown's last game, I mean, you're driving the club for what could be the tying field goal out in Oakland.
Yeah,
in the playoffs, in the divisional playoffs.
It was a great game, and in fact, I remember it was a fourth down play, and I've got Chip Myers coming open, and I'm just getting ready to throw it, and I think Ted Hendricks got a sack on me at that point in time. But it was I think we learned how great it was to be able to play at home. And in '73, our first playoff game was in Miami against that great Dolphins team.
Yeah.
I always think back that it was a cold week in Cincinnati before we went down there.
Right.
And we practiced here all week and went down on Saturday. And then you get one of those upper 80-degree days in Miami when it's humid. And that really took a physical toll on our team. And I think you could almost see us hit the wall at the end of the first quarter.
Right.
And from then on, I always believed that, it was tougher going from cold weather to hot weather because it was physical. If you go from hot to cold, it's mental. And if you're mentally tough, you can handle that.
Right. Yeah. I think too that also in that it might have been the first time he carried the ball, but Essex Johnson, I think, in that game in Miami, went down with a knee injury, and that was a hell of a blow because he was a great back for you.
No, Essex was very James Brooks-like. They were not tall in stature, but they could run inside, outside. And Essex was a great pass receiver, as well. And certainly losing him in that ball game was a big factor.
You mentioned how Paul Brown liked smart quarterbacks. That '81 team was that had a bunch of smart guys. I mean, you can just look in the like in the broadcast booths. Lapp, Collinsworth. I guess Lapp could have gone to any Ivy League school. Your old road roommate. Collinsworth, obviously a bright guy. You played in the league for 16 years, but you coached longer. You coached 17 years in the league. And, as the Bengals offensive coordinator, I think one year guys had the fifth most points in the league, which, doesn't happen very often. So, you were smart enough to be a coach.
Yeah, man, you talk about, coaching things. And I remember, Dave Shula gave me the chance to come in and coach. My only regret is I wish I would have gone into coaching right after playing. And you talk to a lot of people. And it's, well, God, what do you want to do that? The hours you put in, you got to be crazy to go into coaching. That's why I didn't want to be crazy. And, but I'd always, I went to college. I wanted to be a high school math teacher and football and basketball coach. So coaching was always kind of what I wanted to do. And, after 6 years trying to fake it like I was a broadcaster, Dave Shula, gave me a chance. But, I remember one of the real special times when Bruce was the head coach and Jeff Blake was starting. That was the year we brought Boomer back as a backup, and we're up in Indy playing, and Jeff was struggling, and Bruce said that was the first game he had turned the play calling over to me.
Yep.
And we made the decision to go with Boomer. And for some reason, he and I got on the same page, and I think we won like 5 out of 6 games. The rest of the season, we're averaging about 40 a game.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun because, Boomer and I were just on the same wavelength as a player and coach. And that was exciting as it was for me coaching.
Do you think it was just being a quarterback basically in the same system, right? Because you were in that system for the last 3 years of your career. You know,
Yeah, Boomer and I had been teammates, and so it was, like I say, it was just, a fun aspect. He was, in that stretch, where he was hot and all the plays seemed to work, and it was just again, for a 5 or 6 week magical moment.
I remember Mike Brown saying during that run, Boomer's better. He's better than when he was really good. He was really. I mean, it was like, and if he would tell you, because he never knew if he could play from, the way he made it sound like he didn't know if he could get out of bed from one day to the next, and that's why, he said like, I don't know, like I don't know if I can play I don't know if I can do 16 games of this, but he was just doing it on it with his brain.
Yeah, I think the only game we lost was in Philadelphia when we scored just inside the 2-minute warning, and Bobby Hoying took them down the field to win the game at the end. And we scored. We had first and goal at the 1, and we scored in the first play. And I took a lot of grief from that by some members of the media that I shouldn't have scored so quickly. Yeah. I said if I would have known I could have scored in the 4th play, we would have taken a knee 3 times. But we had to get in the end zone.
It's hard to believe the media would give anybody a hard
time. No, not at all, Jeff.
Yeah, it's funny though. You were talking about, because even when you were out and you were in broadcasting and you weren't coaching, there was always that rumor you'd be coming back. There was always the thing of, hey, Kenny's coming back. I remember I wrote a story. I don't know who I talked to, but I had a story that said Anderson could be offensive coordinator or something. I remember I went to talk to you that day, and you were speaking to a group, and you go, yeah, there's a story. Now let's see now. I've got an offensive personality, and I like to coordinate. Yeah, offensive coordinator. Yeah, you had the people roll. You had the people rolling in the rolling. But you were with. I mean, what made you go leave broadcast, get into coaching? Did you just miss the game?
Well, yeah, and we had a news director that didn't value sports a lot at the station.
That's always bad. That's always bad, Kenny.
And I remember, Charlie Meacham was the head of Great American Broadcasting at the time, and had asked me to become the sports anchor. And I really didn't want to do it, but how do you say no to the big boss? He would take Jerry Thomas and I up to Muirfield Village every year for a day of golf, and that was always the day I'd like to go in. I had a free pass from the chairman of the company to go play golf, so I never had any question about getting that day off. And they asked me to do it, so I said okay. And was starting in August, and right about that time, they had that HBO show Inside the NFL with Nick Bonacani and Lenny Dawson, and I got a call to. They wanted to add a third guy to that, and would I be interested in doing that? And our news director would not let me do it because I was just starting as the anchor, and he didn't want me gone, 2 days a week or whatever it was going to be. And he didn't think about the great publicity that the station would have got, if I would have been doing that. Every business has its plus and minuses, and it kind of always kept going on. And so I remember that year I was going around and because I was still doing the Bengals on radio, and every team we go to, I'm talking to a lot of coaches. I said, hey, listen, if anything opens up at the end of the season, kind of keep me in mind. And after the last game of the year that year, I always had a Monday night radio show with Lapp, and Dave Shula was the head coach. And he was that was the only time he could ever come on the show, was after the last game. And we finished up, and he said, are you serious about coaching? And I said, yeah. He says, come in and interview tomorrow. So I went in and interviewed, and he was very honest with me. So I've got a couple more guys I'm going to talk to, and called me back a day later and brought me down, and I got the job.
I mean, you loved the job. I remember I was covering the, I went over to the, to the Bengals when you were there, when you were the OC, and I mean, you loved it. I mean, and it was, I mean, you're a very exact guy. You're definitely a math guy, precise, and just, it just fits you. Coaching just seemed to me to fit you.
Well, I really liked the grind of it. My favorite day of the week was Tuesday. That's game plan day, and watching the film and figuring out and collaborating with the other coaches, the game plan you're going to come up with. how to attack an opponent, what you want to do, the personnel you're going to use. And, those were really the fun days for me.
You talked about it. You came in the classic quarterback. You're the quarterback in 1971. And so basically, you were in the league for 33 years, 34 seasons. You saw quarterbacks come and go. I would imagine you scouted Brady during the 2001 during the 2000 draft. Where do you, and he's playing in the Super Bowl next week. Where do you put him in the guys that you've seen?
Well, I think everybody in the league, made a mistake on him because he was a sixth-round draft choice. Nobody saw this one, coming. In fact, I know several general managers that, had their scouting staff go back and reevaluate the film on how did we miss a guy, like this. Yeah. But, to be playing in the last game of the year for the 10th time in a career, a chance to win 7. And in fact, Hobby, there's only been one other quarterback that's played in the last game of the year 10 times, and that quarterback won 7 of them. Do you know who that is?
I'm going to say that was Otto Graham. Is that correct?
It was Otto Graham, one of Paul Brown's greatest. So, when everybody talks about, well, who's the greatest of all time? I said, well, you look at that, according to that, it's Otto Graham. And now, of course, Tom Brady will equal that with the win coming up in a couple of weeks.
Did you go back and look at your scouting report on him, Kenny?
Well, I think, was another guy that he was smart. And I think everybody looked, it's hard to remember back. I wish I had all my old scouting books. He was not quick of foot. I mean, he didn't run a great, 40 time. Sometimes you couldn't see his pocket movement skills the way that they are now. He didn't have a tremendous arm. And so, I think it was all those things that everybody kind of graded him down on. But, I think, and it's always the hardest thing to evaluate is what's, between a quarterback's ears. And he's just such a smart player and recognizes things and can get the ball out quickly when he has to. And has just had an unbelievable career.
Who's the best quarterback in the league right now, Kenny? Playing right now?
I don't know. Aaron Rodgers had an unbelievable year, this year, but, and he's, kind of one of the older guys now. And, I think, a lot of these young guys coming up, Patrick Mahomes is just so much fun, to watch play. I mean, you can tell his dad was a baseball player because he's got a lot of different arm angles that he could throw the football at. And he's just doing, he's in a great situation with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. And he is just doing another tremendous job. So it's kind of the old and the new in this Super Bowl. And, but I got to root for Tampa Bay. My coaching buddy, Tom Moore, is still coaching down there in Tampa. And so I'm rooting for Tampa.
Amazing, isn't it? Now Tom's, I don't know how old Tom's got to be.
Like 81 now.
Yeah. Now you guys have known each other forever, right? Tom Moore, who was also the quarterback's coach in Indy.
He was Peyton's offensive coordinator for most of his career. Right. Yeah, Tom and I met at an offense-defense football camp in Fairfield, Connecticut. And he was the one that was running the camp. And this was, a camp where it was a full contact camp and coming in, and they always had different pro players coming in. And he was coaching with the Steelers at the time. And for some reason, he and I always hit it off and always remained friends. And he was, once I got into coaching, he was a big mentor of mine.
Yeah. What was it like winning the Super Bowl with the get in the ring? I mean, as a coach,
well, I remember, it was hard for my kids because, it's no matter where I was working, it was hard for them to root for the Steelers, but, they always wanted to support me. And I remember going back after the game to the team hotel and getting ready for the party that we were going to have. And I'm sitting in the bar with my wife, Christy, and I, and all of a sudden, Franco Harris comes in and Joe Green and Lynn Swan, they come up. Hey, Kenny, congratulations. You get a Super Bowl ring. But you had to come to Pittsburgh to get it.
Jeez. Well, didn't they invite you? I mean, those guys had high regard for you. The Steel Curtain.
Well, I think back to those days, and it was certainly a heated rivalry. But I think it was one of respect. And I know to this day, I'm still good friends with Joe Green and Lynn Swan and Jack Ham and those guys. And, and it's kind of fun to see him a little bit. And in fact, I just played with Mike Wagner and Jack Ham golf, a few months ago when they were down here in Hilton Head.
You were talking about Mahomes. I guess you give Brady the edge, or you want Brady to win this one, I guess, probably because of Tom. Right?
Well, I would like to see that, but they've got a lot of weapons on offense.
Yeah.
And Todd Bowles has done a nice job with their defense. So, although I think both defenses are good, I think there's going to be a bunch of points scored in the Super Bowl.
You coached the enemy. In Cincinnati. Good. Always seemed to be a very a team guy, smart guy.
A great guy, a real good player, a smart player, just a fun personality, a great teammate.
Yeah. I would think he'd make to be a pretty good head coach if you look what he's done as a coordinator and working with Andy.
You would think, sometimes when you keep playing this long, it's tough for you to get real serious about the interview process.
Right.
You would hope that he gets his shots. I think he'd do a great job as a head coach.
Where do you think Burrow at some point is gonna? When do you think he'll be able to step into the upper crust?
Oh, well, as soon as he's healthy. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind or anybody's mind that he's going to be a top echelon quarterback. He's, whatever it is, he's got it. He's a smart guy. I think, besides, all his football attributes, I think his leadership skills are off the chart. And, to come in as a young guy, and there really is no off season, training camp is different. And for him to get the respect of everybody on the team that quickly, and, and a lot of the issues that arose because of the pandemic and other things, he was at the forefront as a spokesman for the team, well thought out in his comments. And, this goes back to, his Heisman acceptance speech,
right?
With what he did to help out his hometown, his home county up in Athens.
I guess I got to get you. I in 33 years, the best quarterback you've seen since you came into the league. Best quarterback.
Wow. I don't know. I think, of all the guys, that I scouted, the one that I could say was can't miss was Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Right. Where do you put, if you were scouting Burrow, would you, I'm not, he's obviously not Manning, but is he a guy that might get a similar evaluation as far as being able to put up big numbers for a long time?
Oh, no question. But like any quarterback, it's, what do you have around you? And I think if you look at the success that I had here, when we had the good years, look at the team that was around me. Yeah. Whether it's in the mid 70s, whether it's in the early 80s, you look at Boomer and the success that he had, look at the guys that he had around him. And you look, when Andy Dalton came in, all of a sudden, the Bengals were in the playoffs the first 5 years, but look at what he had around him. And so I think a quarterback is always going to be a product of the guys that are on the field with him.
One last question. Got to ask you about the Hall of Fame. I keep hearing from the guys up there, they're going to get one of you guys in there, Kenny Anderson or Kenny Riley. I just, when I introduced you with those credentials, there's also the 4 passing titles, and obviously the records for accuracy, the 81 MVP. Obviously, you belong. How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel worse for Kenny Riley. He's got the 4th most interceptions in NFL history. Yeah. And you look at the bulk of his career, they weren't throwing the ball as much as they are now. He didn't have those opportunities. Yeah. And every guy in front of him, I believe, is in the Hall of Fame. And so, like I said, when you look at that, if you're 4th all time, the 3 guys in front of you are in the Hall of Fame. And, like I said, you go back in that era where quarterbacks didn't throw the ball. How many times did you see Bob Greasy? He's throwing the ball 13, 14 times a game.
Right.
Go back and look at mine. How many times where there's 18, 19, 20, 22 times that you're throwing a game, and so you don't have that many opportunities to come up with those numbers. I think that is really a mistake on their part.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny, and a just a tough summer with Kenny passing. I mean, Essex Johnson passed not too long ago. It's been a Sam earlier in the year. It's been a tough year for the family.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and the Bengals family will always be a close family, and I think that's one of the things that's been hard. This is the first year since I've retired from coaching that I haven't been back to at least a couple of games,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just there just weren't the opportunities. You don't want to travel as much, and so like I say, I really feel good about the direction the Bengals are going in. I know one thing: you can't win without a quarterback, and we've got our quarterback.
Right. I guess, but like you said, when you think of the Hall of Fame, you think of Kenny Riley too, right? I mean, that's you think of him as well as I mean, when I think of you guys, and maybe that's certainly the case, is you think of both of you. You know what I mean? I mean, that's and the 40th anniversary of you guys going to the Super Bowl. This would be a great moment, for at least one of you to go in.
Well, like I say, I feel worse for Kenny Riley, not having that opportunity to be there in person, and but I think he's really a deserving candidate.
We can't thank you enough for hanging in here with us, Kenny, despite the frog in the throat. But we can see why you went into broadcasting. You carried this interview, and I appreciate your time for that. I'm not gonna say goodbye. I'm gonna talk to you throughout the year as we continue to celebrate that 1981 team.
Well, I'm looking forward to coming back when I come down to the stadium and can get in to talk to people there. And now it's still kind of a bubble down there where the people have to get tested and outsiders just don't get in. And
Right.
Unfortunately, right now I'm an outsider.
Something and ask you: have you had a chance to talk to Burrow at all, or have you had a chance to?
No, I've not met him. We texted a couple of times. I've wished him good luck, those kind of things, and so I look forward to that day that I can get together and meet with him and talk to him.
Can't wait to see Kenny Anderson back at Paul Brown Stadium. That will be a great day, and be a great day for everybody. And Kenny, best to the family, the best to Christy, and stay safe. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
We'll do it. Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
Thank you very much.